All right, how's it going, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Forward Thinking Founders, where we talk to founders about their companies, their visions for the future, and how the two collide. Today, I'm very excited to be talking to Farhaj Mayan, who is the co-founder of Kanna. Welcome to the show. How's it going?
It's going great, man. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. We've interacted quite a bit on the Twitter, and now we get to take the conversation to the podcast, which is super exciting. For people that don't know what you're working on with Kanna, can you kind of share what is it and what you're working on?
Yeah, for sure. So at Canna, we're building a single system for legal cannabis farms and dispensaries to hire, train, and manage their workforce. We're kind of taking bets on two different products. One, which is a direct-to-consumer education platform where workers can hop on, go through courses, get certified, and find their first job. And on the other hand, we have a really cool people operation system that lets these farm and dispensary owners hire on-demand workers and manage their full-time staff.
So let's kind of break it down from both sides of the market. So let's say I wanted to get a job in this industry. Can you kind of walk through what I go through, what type of, what kind of process I go through in my experience for people that are listening that might be in that boat?
Yeah, absolutely. So you'd either see an ad or a job posting that talks a little bit about Kanna University. So you'd hop on, you go through a Cannabis 101 and a Trimming 101 course where you get certified and actually learn about the trade. And as soon as you do, we give you an invitation to our independent contractor marketplace. So when you're on there, we look at your location, we kind of geofence our app, and as soon as, a farm posts a job, we send you the offer. You can accept it and then show up to the farm for your first day of work in the cannabis industry. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, honestly, anything that what's cool about this is industry specific. So if you're trying to break into if you're trying to break into film or music, there's a million different things you could do, but not I feel like it's hard to find the signal versus this. No, you're trying to break into cannabis, this is where you go, which makes a lot of sense. For the other side, can you kind of share what it's like for the people looking to hire in the industry and the farms, and kind of describe their experience and how they would get on the platform?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. You'd engage with us for a pilot, and essentially how our system works is we have these things called work credit, where one work credit is equal to the matching of an independent contractor who comes to work an 8-hour shift that day. What's kind of sucks, but a reality for a lot of these cannabis business owners is that statistically they see really high turnover. So about 60% of their workforce turnover in the first 2 months. That's because they can't give these people consolidated access to training, upskilling, and simple things like payroll, insurance, and benefits. So we just simplify that whole process, and an employer can hop on, just push a button, share details about his job, and magically pre-vetted, trained, insured workers show up and do a great deal.
And can you kind of take me into why you decided to work on this, or what the origin story for Kanna is?
It's a pretty funny story, but essentially before this company for 2.5 years, me and my CTO worked on another platform called Fade. It was a personalized barber booking marketplace. We launched in Dallas, grew to early revenue, got our first enterprise contract and a pre-seed investor. Now, after I pitched 295 of them, who was going to come in to lead our round. Long story short, the exact same day we were going to cash our check is when Squire, the barber booking platform out of New York, amazing company, announced their $8 million raise with, Y Combinator's Series A fund, a lot of the top East Coast VCs. They actually just raised $43 million. But Square, the payments platform, also launched their appointment booking software and made it free. So we were being outspent 32x on all acquisition channels. And we're we had a great run, but unfortunately, I don't think, I was sophisticated enough as a founder to raise enough money or kind of claw our way through the market to generate traction. And dominate the white space. So we winded it down, and while I was kind of going through the existential crisis because I dropped out of school to work on that company full time, of failed company, failed founder, literally about 4 days into the process, my CTO got a call from one of his good buddies in college, Zildjian, who's now one of our co-founders too, and he went, "Hey, Brad, surprise! I just moved from Austin to Oklahoma. Surprise number 2, I have a legal cannabis farm here, and I just fired my grandma for being a really bad worker. So can y'all get into a car, wrangle some friends, come up and help me out? Because I needed to get this stuff there yesterday to my dispensary, And I was like, wait, what? Weed's legal in Oklahoma? So that was essentially the inception of the idea, because we went up there, typical founder fashion. I was pitching him Fade, and he's like, full stop, Farhaj, I'm a $10 Supercuts guy, never going to use the app. But then he was just like, wait, is there any way you can repurpose Fade to make a trimmer booking platform for me? And we toyed around with the idea of a labor marketplace, and it started to gain traction pretty rapidly. Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm curious what if you don't want to go into this, you don't have to, but
I'm down to dive into anything.
Was it all the same? Was it all the same venture? Like, is it still pretty like that Inc. or the LLC? Is it still the one that you set up? Then I go, you just pivoted and now working in this market?
No, we winded that down completely. So me and Brad came along, and then my CPO Vu, he just winded out his company Creatorland too. And we kind of got together to work on this. And I guess like one of the reasons why Fade failed actually was because we got stuck in this like next feature fallacy. It's like one more feature for this one barber and another feature for this other barber. And it was a month and a half and 2 months of development time, leading to a product that not a lot of people actually wanted to use, just a select few. By the time we got to market, it was too nuanced and not relevant to a broad spectrum of people. So with Kanna, we decided the exact opposite. We like doxed all of Fade's code, and we were like, we're going to start from scratch and have an entire manual process doing the management. Start off as a temp staffing agency and essentially figure out what the Achilles heel of the industry is, come up with a thesis, and then productize all of our different processes. So it was pretty cool. And, honestly, I think that's one of the best decisions I made.
And as someone who, like you mentioned, like, so Fade, it didn't work out. I have had many things that have not worked out. I'm still, I would say what I'm doing now, hopefully is the first thing that truly does work out. So I'm very intimate with the psychological challenge that comes from the imposter. It's not even the imposter syndrome. It's like, wow, like, am I cut out for this? Should I go back to, whatever? How with you, since you dropped out of school to work on a company, that specific one didn't work out. Can you kind of walk me through the psychology that you had and like, or the mindset and how you were able to even like convince yourself to like try again versus just like, oh gosh, like maybe I'm not cut out for this and going into something else? Like, how'd you get back up and go for another swing at bat when you had such like some hard times?
Yeah. I mean, it was tough, man. I'm a brown kid. I was going to school to become a roboticist, and I had a pretty great track record for building drones, and I worked in like labs really early on. And, that was kind of the track that was laid out for me. And then I got into startups. And, actually when I first like dropped out, my parents had for a short amount of time disowned me, and I was actually homeless for like about 3 or 4 months. I don't know what it was that woke me up in the morning, and I walked over from my friend's couch to a McDonald's to hop on the Wi-Fi and do investor calls like everything was okay. But one day we won a pitch competition, got a check that gave us a little bit of runway, and then things started going the up and up for Fade. So when it went down, from like a mental wellness perspective, I was definitely in a really tough place. Because I was distant from my family, the company didn't work out. My co-founder and I took a lot of risks, and it was bearing on me pretty hard. Essentially, like Kanna kind of came out of that because I was just like, well, I have nothing else to do right now. I've invested my like heart and soul into building like the startup ecosystem here in this company. So why not give it a shot? And then we were just running like small experiments very frequently. And it was like one of them would hit and we would double down, and another would hit and we would double down. And then we learned. And then, in just a couple of months, we became like subject matter experts in labor management and cannabis, because we went and personally worked at the farms and like understood, that the spreadsheets that they had on their doors were leading to, the bad hiring decisions and retention decisions. And it kind of steamrolled into where we got today. And, it's crazy to think that like we started this company 10 months ago, and the situation I was talking to you about happened like not more than a year ago. So it's been a rocket ship, but that transition was definitely hard. And I'm someone who's really vocal about, founders actually finding like help, especially therapy, and having really good conversations with executive coaches early on, because you'll thank yourself so much later on for you deciding to help yourself early. Yeah.
You mentioned in there that you run experiments, you double down when something works. And then you just keep doing that. Can you kind of walk me through that? And like for people that are listening that are like, wait, is he a scientist? Like can you kind of describe what you mean by experiments, and like how have you learned to fine tune that cycle? Because I myself am actually like not that great at it. I do experiments, but it's not super like it's not like the scientific method for startups, right? It's kind of disorganized. How do you run your process and your experiments?
Yeah, so we give everybody in the team, not just me, the ability to have 1 to 3 different ideas that are new that we haven't tried out yet that they can run with for that month. By the end of the month, we just look at the results of that experiment. If it's working, we double down with more resources, whether it's time or money. If it's not working, we kill it instantly. So that helped a ton, because when we started out, we had the manual matching process, right? We'd field a call. Essentially what happened was like, oh, Z's friends, both of them want to come on and use Kanna. We don't have enough workers, so let's put up a Webflow page and throw a Craigslist ad because we can do ads on Facebook or Instagram. Next thing you knew, my inbox is firing up, and we got close to like 800 applicants, and we're like, okay, now we got to get them to work. So when we got them to work, we saw turnover was happening, and we're like, what's an experiment we can run to increase retention? And it's like, actually train the workers. So we started to do inside training, and there were a lot of experiments that kind of led to different iterations. Like we've iterated to 4 different business models before we even found model market fit. Started out with the flat transactional based fee, then pivoted into monthly subscriptions, then found out that wasn't working. So I think having an experimental cadence is really important for the first 2 years of a startup, because you're still kind of getting towards and moving the needle towards product market fit, which is still something that's vague and arbitrary, but you get a semblance of understanding to when things are working, and also at the same time you're not over compensating or indexing on something that wasn't really working in the first place. But yeah, it was interesting though. I mean, like the experiment is the reason why we decided to double down on Kanna U actually, because what happened was when COVID hit, we started to gain pretty good traction in OKC, get more farms, and instantly overnight we couldn't do any more in-person training sessions. And cannabis sales started to skyrocket. So inbound requests from farms wanted to bifurcate their workforce, like use their full-time workers to do all the important stuff, and then have a large amount of part-time workers come in another shift in the CDC compliant environment to get it through. Like we didn't have enough labor to supply them because we couldn't vet or train them properly. That's when we're like, why don't we translate all this curriculum that we have to an online kind of academy where people can go on and learn, and we can just run an experiment to see if they still have enough context to do a great job on the first day. And we found out, wow, it did work, So yeah. I don't know if I can get a lot more like nuanced particularly, but I really love kind of having that culture of running experiments and making it a core process, like part of your iteration process early on.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate you sharing that. I have a question that I'm actually going to answer to you after you answer, because like I think it's actually a pretty important topic, which is you took a massive amount of risk, when you first started in your entrepreneurial career, as did I. And I am, and there's people listening that either just took the leap or are thinking about taking the leap and are trying to evaluate risk. And, in this case, let's say these are like maybe people that are high school, college aged, folk. What would you say to these people who are thinking about like taking a leap, taking a lot of risk? Not even like what should they do, but what advice would you give to them, or what mental model would you share with them to how to think about risk at the earliest stages of like an entrepreneur's life?
I think like the inflection point for me was when I kind of lost all of my ego and became a sponge to others. And the second thing that I had started to do is just help people without expecting anything in return. Those two things kind of turned into this massive like goodwill flywheel that helped me out so much today. And it still continues to help me out just because like I didn't do it as a favor. I saw that my friend's company was exceptionally well, and I pitched to VC and we were not a fit. And I'm like, well, your thesis relates to this buddy and he's doing pretty well, so I think y'all should connect. Outside of that too, I think now there are a lot of incredible resources for people in what I like to call, flyover cities that aren't SF or New York, that are trying to get, as sophisticated or tap into those networks so that they can get their company to fundraising viability. Y Combinator Startup School is a great starting step. A lot of these VCs write very nuanced Medium articles about their thesis on, the future of work or SaaS or whatever. And I think if you spend a really good amount of time while you're experimenting with the idea, or now you're trying to get to viability, to learn about, the failures that founders like us have made in the past and made public, you can skip the 2.5 years of misery we went through. And I've made it like a big part of my mission too, is like underestimated founders like here and there. Like about a fifth of my week, I just open up my hours to talk to them and be like, yo, this and this I did wrong. Doesn't mean you can't do it, but hopefully it saves you time, money, and energy. Yeah.
That's so funny. Like there's this quote that's like, if you're smart, you'll learn from your own mistakes. If you're smarter, you'll learn from other people's mistakes or something like that. Like for me, on the risk front, I don't know. It's hard. Like I might not be qualified to say this because like I haven't found, depending on how you look at it, I personally don't think I found like success yet. In some ways I have, in many ways I haven't. So like we'll see if it pays off, but I would not. I regret nothing about quitting my job on 2 credit cards 3 years ago and just rolling the dice on me, because although financially it put me in a hole, it allowed me to do things that were not normal for the location that I lived in, for the age that I had, which now, being a 26-year-old, I like, in Phoenix, Arizona, I have a network and experience that like not many people in Phoenix, Arizona like me have, not because I'm special or anything, but because I took that risk when I was 22 to give me that opportunity to get all this. So again, I'm still in debt, I'm not wealthy. But I
feel that.
But I think that I have a good feeling about the future.
Yeah.
And that's
I mean, I think like personally, you've
feeling.
Probably grown so much in a very short amount of time, right? I started working on companies when I was 20, and I think like the weird maturity that I got, I'm only 23 right now, in that short amount of time, and like my like understanding of a lot of the different moving parts in the universe are so much more nuanced. I'm really grateful I took that risk. I regret nothing. Would I do it again, in the next 4 years? Absolutely not. But that was an incredible learning experience. I met so many amazing people. And I really think like my network has become a lot more powerful than a lot of other people my age, from our investors to my co-founders to people who are excited to work for our company today. And it's really good to see. It's like something that you're building is actually meaningfully impacting somebody else's lives. And I think that's a very rare form of happiness most people aren't able to get to. And I'm glad I'm here now, so.
For sure. It's all about how you get here.
I mean, you with Forward Thinking City, you're helping people across the world, access, educational resources pertaining to startups that they otherwise won't be able to.
Well, I definitely think that it's been a journey. It's not honestly in the long tail. It hasn't even been that long. It's only been like
feels like forever.
I started my interest in startups about 5 years ago. So for 8 years I was like a musician guy, and about 5 years ago I'm like, oh, like startups are interesting, and then my first company was 3 years ago, and like so I think that for the first time though in 5 years I found the thing that like it's pretty much like I'm really good at it, and it doesn't feel like work to me, and it's good for the world, and that's like the ikigai. There's like a whatever it's called.
Ikigai, I think that's
that's right. So it's good. So in regards to to Kanna, so let's say you keep going, it keeps growing, it keeps working out. What would you say the next 10 years looks like for you? Or I guess in other words, what's the big vision for Kanna?
Yeah, I mean, we want to build like the single source of truth for people working and employing people in the cannabis industry. I think because of how overregulated, underserved the marketplace is, it's very hard to bridge a lot of transparency between state and individuals. And if we can kind of consolidate access to all of these things that help people build equity and wealth, that's a win. Starting with becoming like the standard for education, and on the other side, building infrastructure that helps even the people who were oppressed by the war on drugs build equity and wealth in the space. So personally, that's something we're passionate about. And I think this is an industry that's going to skyrocket to growth, and a lot of the other kind of subdued marketplaces are going to start to open up too, with like psilocybin getting into actual medical trials and MDMA treatment being, considered for certain kind of mental illnesses. And I think there's a lot of opportunity to create jobs and happiness for people. And if we can be a core part of that, that's, success for me. Yeah, it's been interesting though. Like we're like about to, I guess this is the first time we're dropping it, but like Kanna U's beta version is coming out early in the spring next year. And we're working with Jason Pinsky, who is the executive producer for Bong Appetit and Weed Kit on Vice. And then a guy who like directed and produced like 40 of the master classes to have like a very like incredible course catalog. So I'm really excited about that, because I think like just making it very easy for people to access like that level of high fidelity education. They're like, yeah, it gives me the tingles. So it'll be cool.
Yeah, that's sweet. Congratulations on that.
Thanks,
that.
Yeah.
That's huge. And obviously you like there's some help there, but you'll need some way more help, as you go along. Go along. Like you'll need employees, maybe more investors, customers, things like that. So my last question for you is, how can the forward thinking community help you with what you're doing? Are you looking for people to work with? Are you looking for BD partnerships, investors? How can the listeners help out?
Yeah, I mean, right now, fortunately, we're in a really good position. We're making our final hires to get the core team together. We just closed out our pre-seed round. I guess like more than I'm looking for help from the forward-thinking, community, if I could help a lot of them, you know, whether it's giving brutally honest feedback on their pitch decks or helping make introductions to relevant investors, you know, I'd love to offer myself as a resource. I guess when Canna U does come out, if you want to spread the word to the world, you know, that'd be a big help for us. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And if someone wanted to learn more about what you're doing on the internet, you know, get in touch, find you on social media, what are the links? What's the URL? What's the Twitter? Do you have an email? How can people get in touch?
We're entering the drop zone. But yeah, I'm at Farhaj Mayan, FarhajMayn on all channels. I've been very lucky to get that handle because it's a rare name, I think. But Twitter, I'm pretty active on there. LinkedIn, I'm kind of active on there. I used to be a lot more active. If you ever want to give me a shout, find me there. And for Kanna, we're at HireKanna, HireKanna.com. And just that at all social channels too. So if you're in Oklahoma and if you're looking for a job in cannabis, you know, we'd love to be a resource.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.